Luca here at Fraunhofer. Nice to meet you. You're going to show me some of the amazing tools that Fraunhofer is inventing to help us as broadcasters not be fooled by all the fakes out there. Can you show me what you've got here?
Yes, Steve. So thanks a lot. Here we have an example that we created ourselves. Will be an example of a video which has been manipulated, and that is what Obama. This is quite a famous speech from Obama that was made in the Cairo a couple of years ago.
Many Gulf states have enjoyed great wealth as a consequence of education and innovation, and some are beginning to focus it on broader development. But all of us must recognize that war will be the currency of the 21st century. This change can bring fear. And
I'll stop it here. So what did we do with this video? At the beginning, Obama was saying the opposite. He was saying that the Gulf states until then have enjoyed wealth thanks to oil, but they were going to switch to education and innovation as a currency. We swapped the two parts and then completely modified the message. We added also in yellow, this change can bring fear, and more importantly, at the middle, we took an applause, which instead was taken from recording from the Bundestag. What can we find out if we analyze this sort of content? Well, the first that we will do is to try to figure out whether the location is plausible. And that can be done by checking traces of the electrical network frequency. So we see on the top, this horizontal line that will be coming from the mains and is corresponding to the 50 Hz, which are used in Cairo for electricity. However, if we check more in detail, we see that right at the beginning of the applause, this frequency, which normally is changing very smoothly, has very abrupt jump. And that is, by itself, a sign that something at the beginning of the applause might be off. If we go further, we check what happens with the recording device which was used. If we check that on the top right, we see the response of the microphone. This is determining the color, so how is it going to sound on average. Now, if we check how does this change at the beginning of the file, we see that the estimate is slightly changing over time, but still has a shape which does not vary too drastically. Whereas if we check on the applause, that response and hence the color of the microphone itself is changing very drastically. That is already a sign that something more is very suspicious about the applause. Another analysis that we can do is to check the encoding, which was applied, and we see that while at the beginning we had MP3 encoding, in the middle, where the applause is located, we can find traces of ASC. And this sort of jump of inconsistency is something that can't really be justified. So if we put all of this information together and we compare the outcome of all the analysis, then we can detect that the content itself is very suspicious, and hence we should be very careful about using this for any sort of press information.
And you make this detection software now available to broadcasters for a price?
Exactly. It's available for broadcaster. There is also an API that can be used for testing the tool set and seeing how does it react. And it's also important to find a match between the kind of analysis that we can do and what the needs are. This is something that started from the forensics domain for the forensics labs and for the police. And it will be great if we manage to get it to the point in which it's comfortable to use also for journalists or for people from the newsroom, which do not have such a very strong technical background.
Yes, and I think something like this would be pretty easy to use. I mean, you're you're very reluctant to just put a kind of thumbs up, thumbs down and simplify it. You want people to actually look at all the details which you've just shown so they can make their own conclusions.
Exactly. So the most important tool is how we reason about it. As the example about checking, since this is in Cairo, then we should look for traces at 50 Hertz. It's something that has to come while performing the analysis. If the statement about the content was that this was recorded in Washington, D.C., that analysis by itself would have been already usable to contradict the statement and to falsify completely the content, or whether that was recorded with a mobile phone and then stored as MP4, then we should have never found any traces of MP3. So there is some sort of complexity which will not disappear, because you can't have something so complex be simplified to a bare yes and no answer. You need to be able to understand what's going on, and you need to figure out what the errors trace and what the source of possible errors are in order to use these tools and being confident about the outcome.
These tools can also be used to trace one step and another step. Can you show me what you showed me before about something made an AAC file and then copied to MP3?
Absolutely. So that is a technology which we call provenance analysis. And the idea with that is that if instead of analyzing one file only, but a set of files, you can do much further analysis. You can, first of all, you can compare, you can look for segments which appear replicated among each other in the different input files. For each segment, you can determine how it's relating to the other one. So you can see that from an original file, we created the first version with ASC, then MP3, then ASC again, and so on.
So that means somebody took the original file, they dubbed it into MP3, they made some edits, then somebody else, maybe on another platform, took that file, did something else with it, and each time it was being changed, and you've detected that.
Exactly. And the final outcome of that is something that we can see for this example of disinformation spreading. It starts with taking a public event and then figuring out what can we found about that event in the system. And that would be the outcome. We see that there are two portions of it. They were first reshared on Telegram, each one separately, then they were copied over, distributed on Twitter, and then finally reused on YouTube in combination or in isolation, possibly with additional comments, intro, output music. And by combining provenance analysis, editing detection, and phylogeny analysis and segment matching, we are able to then have this kind of complex analysis and reconstruct the history of a set of files.
This part is about speech synthesis detection.
Correct.
Very famous Zelensky speech at the beginning of the Ukraine war. What have you done here?
So we analyze the file by checking whether the formats, which are the characteristics that describe what a person is saying and how, are distributed in the input content. We did this for every interval of 2 seconds, and then each interval is evaluated separately and specifying whether the content looks as it should in a natural speech or whether it does not. In this case, most of the content is marked with this red to orange, which is the case of synthetic content. And each interval has also a number which tells how the grade of uncertainty. The lower the number, the higher the risk of a false alarm for each interval. And then the final decision is left to the user, according also to both the results, but as well to the additional information which has been provided by the source.
So if we play it, what would we find?
So, at this point, we will see that especially the second part is showing several traces of synthesis, very strong one in which the error is lower than 1 in 100,000, the rate of false alarm. And the further we go on, the more these intervals, which are very suspicious, are appearing, and with a strong confidence. Hence, we can conclude that the content should be checked much more in detail, because indeed it is very unlikely that this is not natural, so that this is not synthetic reporting.